Here are 5 paranatural abilities and phenomena. The first one is thought forms. Thought forms are non-corporeal membranes of emotional and mental matter. They are materialized elemental consciousness entities. It's a stream or cloud of a living idea that's separate from its creator or its source. Thought forms can come from people, from objects, from music, from art, from symbols. They can come from anything. They can take any sort of shape. It's determined by the nature of the thought. The quality of the thought will determine its color, and the definiteness of the thought will determine its outline. Imagine a thought bubble like in a comic strip, and that thought bubble becomes intelligent, becomes its own entity. The thought form is this sort of quasi-sentient, energetic projection of an idea. So these designs, they come from the physical expression of sound, which is called cymatics. Now, cymatics and thought forms are not the same thing, but there is a vibratory component to a thought form. You might be more familiar with the Chladni plates, where they put rice or salt on a device that shakes to the tune of a frequency, and it will form these different patterns. The Theosophist book, Man, Visible and Invisible, gives us this chart of colors, which is the emotional projection of auras. So auras, color psychology, cymatics, thought forms are none of those things, but they are related. This is an illustrated thought form for radiating affection. Here is one of peace and protection. This is a vague religious feeling. Perhaps a better way to describe it is sometimes you hear someone say something, you hear a musical score, or you see a work of art, or even a movie, or read a book. If your interaction with that media is particularly inspiring, emotional, or riling, you'll say that it speaks to you. Or you might even say that you feel it to the core of your being. Let's say you read a line in a book that was so powerful, it moved you. That is an example of an encounter with a thought form. The emotional element of that line that you read projected a thought form, and that enveloped you. Another example is a piece of music that creates in your mind some emotional and imaginary situation. You hear a piece of music and you're transported to this world created by that music. What you're experiencing is an interaction with a thought form. So a single thought form contains that essence of idea, but people's response or reaction to it could be different. But the form is what it is. There's no limit to the form or the number of thought forms. If you have a strong enough thought, if you're clear and definite with that thought, you can create a thought form. We could spend hours talking about thought forms, but hopefully this is enough of a basic understanding that we can move on to number 2. Number 2 is psychokinesis. We're going to approach this phenomena in terms of thought forms. Psychokinesis is the ability to influence or manipulate matter through mental effort or mental processes alone. Everything from changing eye and hair color to moving objects to influencing technology to changing your algorithm to making people think of you, to making people notice you, or to even hide your presence, even changing the outcome of events through willpower of thought. Being a concept of parapsychology, there's no real rules to it, only that you have to have a strong enough thought, a strong enough mind to enact some influence over something, in which case you would be creating a thought form. If thought forms can communicate and invoke in you a whole scenario of imagination, it goes to reason that there may be ways in which they can influence and change other things around us. Perhaps even the microscopic world, different elements, different electromagnetic forces. They, of course, can be negative or positive based off of the will and intention. A thought form is not bound by time, but it can change through time. With sound and color psychology, we know that there are certain influences that they can have on the world around them, certain vibratory effects. A thought form is all of those things only within the nimbus of an emotional idea. Number 3 will help us understand this even better, cloud control. If you look at a cloud, you can will it to disappear. You can also will clouds to form, but it does take significantly longer. You can also change the shape and structure of the clouds. It's the projection of the thought form that can change the state of the clouds. You can verify this for yourself outside. It'll take about 5 to 10 minutes for a cloud to disappear. I believe this to be the basis for the rituals, rites, dance, festivals, and prayers around rainmaking. The invocation or summoning of rain through community effort. Humans have always believed that they have this influence with the clouds, with the weather. In the same capacity, you may feel certain emotions during a thunderstorm. There is a projection of a thought form coming from the thunderstorm that is touching you. Even as recent as the Wild West, there were rainmakers who were trying to summon rain. Number 4 is astral projection. Astral projection is not so much an astral body leaving your physical body and exploring the world. It is a temporary extrasensory perception through a thought form, one that is generated through the deep trance of meditation. If you get into that deep state of meditation, you will notice that you're going inward into your mind. The way to enter the deep stages of meditation and to astral project is through something called image training. So once you're in a comfortable position, you close your eyes and your breathing slows, you need to find a physical location to be in your mind. The room that you're meditating in works perfectly fine. Now what you do is recreate that room, all the objects in it, all the textures, all the smells, all the angles and the colors and the shapes. And you want to, in your mind, physically move around and touch everything and interact with everything and exert some physical force onto things. You want to create it as realistic as possible. It gets easier the more you do it, and if you spend your waking hours aware of the senses that you're feeling and committing them to memory and kind of pre-imagining them, it will help a lot when you're trying to get into the deep stages. It's hard to explain, but if you try it, I think you'll notice that you do go inward into your mind and then you project a thought form out. Number 5 is the stigmata. They are the wounds associated with Christ on the cross. The sufferer seems to be able to possess a lot of psychokinetic or paranatural or spiritual abilities. In the practice of Qigong, you have something called the microcosmic orbit, which is kind of like the flow of energy in the body. There are gateways that parallel the stigmata. They are the upper gateway and the lower gateways, which are in the middle of the palms and the middle of the feet, the Laogong and the Yang Quan. If we consider the thought form psychokinesis angle, it could be very well possible that these gates are bursted open. I think it's possible that if you spend decades or simply have a strong enough thought meditating on a statue or icon or just the idea of the wounds that happen to line up with the upper and lower gateways in Qigong meditation, it's possible that the gateways open. That stigmata could potentially allow in free energy into your body, which you can then manipulate through psychokinesis and thought forms. In a lot of Buddhist iconography, you'll notice eyes or slits in the palms, which I think is speaking to that same maybe subconscious understanding of energetic gateways within the hands. This is a very old symbol found throughout the ancient world and still used today called the hamsa. But as we'll see in a second, you've known and probably believed this your whole life. The idea that your hands can be used as a source of power, magic, or healing. I'm sure many of us have heard the healing practice of Reiki, but we don't even have to look this specific to find examples. Controlling some sort of power is the most fundamental system in any fictional story. It's through the hands and the feet that you can control the elements. Whether it's the Force in Star Wars, or Thor calling his hammer, or a superhero flying, but only because they're using their feet to jump. I think it's a belief as old as humans that through the power of your thought and intention and the energy from your hands or your feet that you can manipulate your environment or heal people or project some sort of consciousness. Just think about how often we stick our hands out to something out of our reach or control, like that scene in Spider-Man when he's catching the trays. There's not enough time to get to tulpas or subnatural worlds, but those also are thought forms. Thanks for watching.